Great. So we've got a real global gathering here. Ruth in Ireland, uh, lots and lots of you, and I think there are going to be more joining us. And obviously, with so many people here, there won't be much chance for us in this session to have a big discussion that everyone can take part in. But what was really clear from the response, the quick response to this, and also I think there's been 44 shares on social media, was that question that I tagged this event with: how can we, how can ritual and ceremony support us and help us to navigate this time of climate and ecological emergency? I'm guessing from the big response to this that this is a question that really resonates for all of you here, and I'm sure will resonate for others besides as well. Just seeing lots of hellos. Welcome, welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for coming and joining us. I know for most of you it's the first time that you've come to a School of Celebrancy live event. This is only the third of those events. The films of the other two are here on the page. And yeah, we've just started doing these live events every month on the last Tuesday of every month at this time. So, and as you know, tonight I'm going to be joined by Harriet Nwyfre Sams, who is a writer, a celebrant, an archaeologist, and also an ecotherapist. And Harriet's going to be talking with us about the work that she's been doing, particularly the work that she's been doing inspired by this book. Sorry, you're seeing it backwards, I think. Radical Joy for Hard Times by Trebbe Johnson. And on the back of the book, what Trebbe says is, in a world devastated by human interaction and natural disaster, from clear cutting and fracking to extreme weather and urban sprawl, creating art, ritual and even joy in wounded places is essential to our collective healing. And yeah, I've been very inspired reading the book and also listening to Trebbe in a couple of broadcasts that I will put up links to on this page later as well. And I know she in turn has been very much inspired by the work of Joanna Macy and others. And as well as writing the book, Trebbe has also really started a movement with this work. There's a website, Radical Joy for Hard Times, and I expect that some of you here may be involved with that movement aside from Harriet. So I know that there are lots of things that Harriet would like to share with us about the way that she's been working. So without further ado, oh, hello Marion in Poole, Lois in New York. Oh, Heather, hello Heather in Canada. Very lovely to see so many of you here. So I'm now going to hopefully now bring in Harriet into the conversation, and we will be able to see and hear her any moment now. And you can see both of our faces. Hi, Harriet.
Hi. Oh,
How are
thank you
you?
so much for bringing me in. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So I'm here in Brighton on the south coast of England, where it's currently quite cold and rainy. And where are you?
I'm in Creuse in the middle of France, and it's also quite cold and rainy. But we've just had the most beautiful sunset, so it's gorgeous. We're waiting for the moon to rise.
Yes, there doesn't look like there's any gap in the clouds here for me to see the moon when it does come up, but who knows? But yes, it is the full moon tonight, which is a lovely time for people to be meeting. And it's a lovely thought that with all of this gathering here spread across the globe, that the light of that full moon is going to be shining on us all during the course of the night that follows on from our conversation.
Yeah. Oh, yes. That feels really good.
Yeah, and my feeling is, I mean, I'll say this at the outset of our conversation, that I feel as though there's been such a reaction to this subject that it somehow feels to me that this conversation is going to be the beginning of something, and that we're going to take this somehow further. That there'll be a path that we together amongst us here and amongst us who I know will be joining us, who aren't, I know that, for example, there have been quite a few people in other parts of the world who've been asking me, is this conversation going to be recorded, and that they can't join in the middle of the night. But, yes, I really want to kind of really send that heartfelt welcome to everyone who's joining us across time as well as space. We're all part of this conversation, and let's keep it going. And those of you who watch afterwards, please comment and add to the discussion as well, and we'll see where this takes us. But yeah, Harriet, I want to ask you first of all, just to unpack. I know that we talked about what I was going to begin asking you, but first of all, I want to just ask you if you could quickly tell us what's an ecotherapist, and also what's an archaeotherapist? The new term for me when you first mentioned it, or what ecotherapy and archaeotherapy?
Sure. Well, ecotherapy is essentially a very broad field where you hold somebody or a group in some way so that they can find healing through earth connection. So we've actually just had a conference on Saturday, and we had a surfer, we had a horticultural therapist, we had an art therapist, we had psychotherapists, we had all sorts of different therapists who work with the natural world, either through quite gentle techniques like Shinrin yoku, I think it's called, where, forest bathing, into deep animism. There was an NHS GP who, after a really busy shift, would just place her hands in the soil and breathe. And so that's, ecotherapy. So really it's what I think earth-based spiritualities do in a very natural kind of way, which is that direct connection to the earth for healing. And an archaeotherapist is essentially, well, it's basically you connecting to the built heritage that humans specifically have left in the landscape. All of it. So the most ancient sites, the most mystical, the most healing, the most sort of numinous sites, as well as the more challenging, more up-to-date sort of fracking or open cast coal mines. So all of it. And from perhaps an animistic point of view, understanding that everything is sacred, we would approach both types of sites. So for instance, something really full of sacredness like Stonehenge, would we go to that site with healing in mind, as well as the local rubbish dump? And how can you feel that there's a sacredness to the earth?
Beautiful. Thank you, Harriet. Sorry, I've just seen a little note from Ruth saying that the sound isn't great from your end, and can that be adjusted? I have to say it's fine for me. I can hear you really clearly. But,
I have got a little bit of an echo on my end, so I'm I can hear myself. I wonder if that's
Oh,
what's going. So
a little bit of feedback.
if I just turn myself down.
Okay.
If I turn right, I've turned my volume down. Is that any better?
As I say, it was all fine for me. I think that there might be a little bit of a feedback, but yeah, I think we can get by. So yes, radical joy for hard times, and I think yeah, we can all relate to hard times, and you know, for all of us who are, you know, who love the land and love the earth and treasure our connection and our, you know, participation, our being a part of nature. So hopefully that's all of us really. You know, when we feel into that, I don't think that
Gonna
any of us can be. Oh great, okay,
yes.
thank you, Laura. And Harriet's going to use her headphones.
Yeah, that sounds
so
like a great idea. I should have thought about that myself. Hang on.
yeah. Thank you very much, Lawrence. Yes, so whilst Harriet's fixing her headphones, yes, I was just saying, yeah, I think we all can sort of feel that pain, you know, of things that we see, feel going on in our own environments, and certainly, you know, some of the things that we can see and hear of going on further afield. I mean, you know, some of the things that Trebbe was writing about in her book, you know, in the early chapters, that kind of devastation really. I'm thinking about when she was writing about this community that had been completely devastated by open cast coal mining in Australia, and you know, where everything was just covered in the black coal dust, and the rolling hills have all been yeah, the tops of mountains sliced off in the States, and yeah, kind of clear cutting the forests. And you know, I think all of us are having moments when we need to kind of just pause and grieve for all that. How do we get from that grief to the idea of radical joy? How does that work?
And that's often something that people struggle with, that joy is possible in such grief and such sorrow and such visceral awareness and witnessing of what seems so out of our control, and we're just there experiencing it. And Trebbe's brilliant idea about 12 or 13 years ago came from a man's comment in he was from the Oneida tribe, somewhere in America, somewhere, I'm not entirely sure where, and he just mentioned, he said that there's no rubbish, it's just orphaned from the circle of life. So we have, this is sort of what I was trying to say about the duality, this sort of idea that some things are profane, that we can turn our backs on certain things. It's too harrowing, it's too difficult, it's too much of the sort of the worst parts of what we've done to the earth. It's just too much, I can't bear it. So I'd rather turn my attention to the beautiful, to the pristine environments, and that's my sense of nature, that's my sense of environmentalism. I'd rather protect something beautiful rather than turn to what's so wounded and what's so damaged. And what Radical Joy for Hard Times says is that will only take you so far, that you that the beautiful stuff, the beautiful world needs to be retained, and it needs to be kept precious. But if we're not careful, we're just going to blindside more and more and more parts of the world. And by doing that, we blindside ourselves to the shadows that we carry with us, you know, that big sack of stuff we'd rather not face, do we just keep hauling? So she began this very simple practice, which is instead of turning away from the open cast coal mine, instead of turning away from the fracking pad, you turn towards it and you say to it, I see you. You are not an orphan from me bearing witness to you, and I am coming to find out about you. I'm coming to touch your edges. I'm coming to feel what I feel, and really let whatever is going to come up. And then a process where we speak how we feel, so for instance, as you say, the mountaintop removal, so people can get minerals and things. You go to a site like that and you speak. How do you feel? You speak the whole lot, even if it's really abstract, like beetles that I never knew existed. I'm just mourning them, and I don't even know if it's true or not. It's just, and also the very personal experience of, I grew up in the lee of that mountain, and now that's no longer there, and my childhood's gone. Then we collect and make something beautiful from what we actually find on the site. So, and that's rubbish, that's leaf litter, so it's organic and inorganic material all put together into some sort of beautiful thing. And it's usually the bird. So can you see there's the Radjoy globe, and then there's the little bird, the red bird. And so I've got into the habit of always making the bird, because it's so symbolic, and it's so, we collectively have this understanding that a bird can fly, and it's a symbol of hope, and all of those sort of messengers from the other side, as well as a symbol of purity and reconciliation, and all those sort of things that birds represent. And the process itself, this is what's so amazing about it, which is where the ritual comes in. It in itself is the ritual. So there's the speaking part, then there's the actual act of creativity and weaving in what you find, and where you're going to place that, and why you're going to place it there, and you can do that on your own or with a group. And then there's a sense of collectively, or even when you're on your own, you sort of know when you're ready. You've done your thing, you've done your bird, and at that point something then has changed. So the grief has been expressed. Then there's this sort of gateway which comes through the artistic creation, and on the other side there's something that's happened which makes participants often realize that they have just spent however long, 20 minutes, half an hour, really getting to know the ground, really getting to know the detritus, getting to know what's not pretty, what's not beautiful, and then making something beautiful. And often what then happens is the responses are, I never realized that really what I was feeling was love, and that there's some joy in what I've created. And yes, it's still a mountaintop that's been blown up, and yes, I can't undo any of that, but I've changed. And then and those ripples carry on for a very, very long time, and often then do manifest into things like activism and that sort of thing. But it's the ritual itself which is often the required change maker between this kind of overwhelming grief and sorrow and harrowing feelings into something that feels much more local and personal and real and manageable.
I heard Trebbe talking about this, and about how this work kind of sits alongside activism, and how it's not in any sense a kind of alternative to any of the other ways in which we can react to these kinds of things happening, campaigning and physical activism, and yeah, all bearing witness, all of the things that we can try to do, but it feels that it somehow it is an enabler, perhaps, of some of those other forms of activism, as well as, you know, something that can enable us to well, resource us, I guess, you know, to be able to kind of, yeah, meet with those places and those events and happenings in the ways that we need to.
2017, do you remember the fracking in North Yorkshire, the threat of the fracking in North Yorkshire, and there was the Preston fracking as well. And I went to the fracking in Kirby Misperton and undertook one of these in the group, and it was really powerful for me because of the gratitude from the live-in activists, the people who are actually there on camp, because it was, I think sometimes we think of respite as being, oh well, let's take our mind off it, we'll go to the seaside and we'll take our mind off our worries, but the respite that they witnessed and felt and experienced was how to return back to a sense of love, and then they actually felt more motivated to carry on.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what's so powerful and so beautiful about it, that it resonated with some of the most dedicated sort of activists that I've ever met, as well as like, for instance, my mum, in a completely different vein. She was walking down her corridor and banged herself against the bookcase and fell over, and bruised her chest quite badly, and then was really fearful of that particular little part of her corridor. And then she did a little earth exchange, where she sort of sat at that place and said, I'm feeling this, I'm ashamed of myself, I feel like I'm losing my ability to move around my house, and you know, all of the things were coming up about how she felt. And then she just made a little collage of something out of what she found there, and then the process itself helped her heal that little space in her house that she had responded to in such a fearful way. And I think that's what's so powerful about this, and where it really connects into the multiple derangements. I've begun to call them derangements rather than, you know, change or chaos. Everything's just getting deranged, quite frankly.
Yeah.
of all levels, you know. So I mean, it was Philip who said beautifully, our zone of our zone of concern is huge, but our zone of you know, intention is tiny, or our zone of concern is tiny. And I think this practice is a really good example of that, where we can sometimes be utterly overwhelmed by the enormity of it. So this practice is, right, let's go really focused in, and actively create ritual around what's manageable and what means something. And if we all did that in our own little pockets, including to our own bodies, like my mum's example, you know, but to like our local communities and everything, I think things could be really powerfully different.
Yeah, I'm just seeing some of the comments here from Sue Townsend has written, often it's too much to face up to, that we as a human collective did this, and the horrendous recognition of all of our responsibility touches many hearts and begins to raise human consciousness, and thus we begin to find ways to heal the earth and ourselves, so that we'll treat the earth and all living beings with true respect and love. And yeah, I heard Trebbe talking in just the same way as you, that with that kind of hope and vision that something changes, that something shifts by us taking part in this, and there's something very powerful as well, I think, in this sense of doing this as part of a global movement, and knowing that we're connected with others who are doing likewise. But could you tell us, Harriet, about your the first time that you did an act of radical joy, and who you did it with, and where, and how, and
Yes, it was 11 years ago. I was in Cumbria, which is where I was living before I moved to France, and I had a group of friends, and I was part of a spiritual healing group as well. So my sort of healing friends and osteopath friends and old buddies and Quakers, and we went to an at-risk stone circle because I was particularly at that point, and I've come back to it full circle with the archaeotherapy, but at the very beginning I was very interested in and concerned about the at-risk heritage of the world. And so I'd found this stone circle, which was under a larch plantation, which was very top heavy and about to topple over, and there was a lot of stones getting moved, and so we went there, and it was raining, and it was midsummer's day, and it was absolutely just that hot rain that falls in Britain, and it was such a powerful experience. I personally know that the ancestors were there as well, because I'd been to that stone circle myself on my own, and sort of said to it, I'm going to do this here and bring some people. And the difference between that stone circle with just me there and a huge, well, not a huge group, it was about 12 of us, it just came alive. You could tell that it wanted to be a community space. So that was my very first one, and I've been doing them ever since. I've done, as I said, I've done the one at the Kirby Misperton fracking site. I'd done one at a manganese quarry in the Picos de Europa Mountains in Spain. We've done one in New York, actually, when I went over to New York to meet Trebbe, and then lots of different ones, but there's all over the world. The one that you were referring to with the soot, that's in New South Wales, and I think that was Glenn Albrecht who created the term solastalgia. He's a frequent earth exchanger, so he's very passionate about this practice, and like you, really feels the energy of it and the benefit to humans, and our ability to care becomes so much more manageable after things like this.
Can I just pick you up on that term, earth exchanger, because I know it's familiar to any of us who've read and listened to it, but can you explain what's meant by this earth exchange, and how that works?
So the charity's called Radical Joy for Hard Times, which is wonderful and big and expansive, but the practice itself is quite specific. It's called an earth exchange, which basically is what it says on the tin, where the site and you exchange emotions and art and creativity and feelings and companionship. We're actually doing a global earth exchange on the 12th of June, which is I'm just looking is a Saturday in 2 weeks' time, and it's basically you just go and do a very simple step process. You can go on your own, you can go with kids. I've done global earth exchanges with kids before, and they love it. They really love it, because they just really feel a space, and love just making art, and it can feel just really lovely. And then going back as well, they often want to go back. It's like, oh, let's go back to that place. And 12th of June, put it in your diaries, and we will be, we've got a mighty network as well, that anybody can join if they'd like to, where we'll share our stories, share our photos and things like that. So yeah,
And
that's
there's,
sorry.
I was going to say there's a Radical Joy for Hard Times community page here on Facebook, isn't there, that people can join and follow, and there's the website with information about the Global Earth Exchange and how people can join. So Harriet, I'm sorry I haven't managed to put up the pictures yet that all of the pictures that you sent me, but obviously I put the one little bird that was the flyer for this event.
I could tell you about that
Could
one.
you tell us?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that was just before lockdown. In sort of February, March, April, I did something that was a little bit of a longer process called Attending to Place, but it's the same. It's from Radical Joy, and I teach it actually with another woman called Sasha, where it's much more in depth, and it really steps into the sort of the being of a place, and it lasts for about a month or so. But this place was in the Pennines, and I just happened upon it. I was walking the dogs, and it turns out that in 1942 to 1945, the British Army were putting, like, they had a depot for weapons up in the Pennines. So mustard gas bombs and all sorts of things like this were all being kept up there. And so I was walking the dog, and all these unexploded ordnance signs and things, and I was really couldn't believe what was just here. It's on the Pennine Way, which makes it even more sort of staggering, really. But I went up there a good few times. I went up there over the course of a few months, and made little earth exchanges every time I went there. And this one was, I found 2 cartridges, shooting cartridges. It's an extremely sparse landscape. It's very, very moorland, very marshy. So there was very little around, apart from these 2 cartridges and some dead grasses. So that was all I had to make it. And so I was sort of fretting. I was like, oh, it should be really beautiful. And my sort of perfectionist instincts were getting triggered, and I was thinking, I really need to make something more beautiful than this sort of really perfunctory little duck shape. But then this voice just said, this is what this site is. It's sparse, it's forgotten, it's kind of like, it's the deep shadow. This is all there is, so make it, and the land will hear. And so I made it. And I all around that sort of area, there are little ritual collages that I've made over the months that I was going there. It's still a very deep and meaningful place for me up there, which is kind of weird in a strange way. I went from being horrified, feeling extremely guilty, feeling shocked at the whole sort of process, to now really being very connected, deeply connected to that land and the history of what it means.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about one comment that came up, in the kind of discussion, on the way to this, a bit of a controversial comment, that somebody said, well, these damaged places have been damaged enough. What they need now is just for us to leave them alone. We don't need to do, go in and even lift a stone, or what would you say to that, Harriet?
Okay, so in the sense of just leave well alone, in that sense of, so, well, that's very interesting, and perhaps there's some real wisdom in that, where that what's happened to the land maybe does just need to be left. And in fact, there's a term for that. They're called sacrificial zones. So a fantastic example of that is the enormous site around Chernobyl, where what's called the sacrificial zone, which is basically humans aren't allowed to go in there. You get sacrificial zones around places like Ministry of Defence places, usually certain areas that they turn into nature reserves, or places that have been open cast coal mines that have are now obsolete, but then get turned into nature reserves. And to a certain extent, the process of rewilding is necessary in part. However, we do have to hold some sense of accountability, so that whatever we do to the land can't be justified because of what might turn out to be quite good for the moorhens and the ducks in 50 years' time. So in a sense, I think it's nuanced and it's complex. The Radjoy process is all about not bringing anything, or everything comes from the land, and so in that sense, we're not tampering with anything. There is the going to, and a lot of places are just obviously easily accessible, and that they are there. People go for walks on public footpaths, and there's all sorts of things that can. Any of those places can be where we can do a global earth exchange. And in fact, one person who was on a course that I ran did an ongoing series of exchanges down at the docks at Bristol, not in the sort of gentrified restauranty bit, but in the back bit that's overgrown because of her Irish descendancy, and felt that there was a story there that was being forgotten. So in a sense, if we want to really find out about the story of wounds and the story of our shadows, sometimes we do have to turn towards, and it is difficult and it is uncomfortable. But it is, I would say, there's a deep healing when we do that.
Yeah. I'm also just thinking, as you've been talking, I've been thinking about, some of the places around where I live. So, I'll say this is, although I've done, related practices, I haven't actually joined in this practice, but I'm certainly going to be, following this sort of discussion and, finding out more about this. But, as I kind of feel in and think into, the places that are calling to me near where I live, I'm really thinking about how somehow through this process we're kind of reaching towards the spirit of the land as it was before these whatever kind of assaults have occurred. And as if somehow through this sort of witnessing and this attending to, we can almost kind of reach past everything that's been done and honour what was there before. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that how you felt in doing the work?
I think perhaps if in the deepest sense of the word, after doing it for years and years and years, I think that is the spirit that comes through, really. The one that goes from that human response of, what a mess, the concrete, the danger, all of that sort of, whatever your site is, to connecting to that living, breathing, fully present part of the world that still exists, whether we've orphaned it or not. We've gone, okay, that was a factory that made asbestos and it closed down in 1974 and nobody's been near it. that's our narrative of it, and we've orphaned it and we turn away. But actually, if we turn towards, we still see that it's still part of this earth. And yeah, there's a spirit existing, it goes back to what I was sort of saying at the beginning, where we have made duality out of sacredness in the world, that some sites are sacred and some sites are not. And if we just threw that out of the room and just said, hey, what if everything's sacred? What if everything is sacred? You know, the fracking pad is sacred, whether it's a really complicated way of telling me to let go of all of my opinions and my thoughts. What if it was all sacred, really, in the grand scheme of things? And it's a radical idea. But I suppose that's what the practice asks us to find out.
Yeah, I get that, and that kind of everything. What if everything's sacred? That kind of comes into, you know, I really noticed in the bird in the flyer. It's made from pigs and stones and things, and it's also made from, is it a spent cartridge or something that the bill? Yeah.
That there's no difference. And actually, just at that point, I wonder, we had a board meeting of Radical Joy in 2018, and this I had a habit of doing, like, what would Rumi say? So I've got my little pocket Rumi, and I just, like, when we couldn't think of anything to say, I'd be like, right, what would Rumi say? And then I opened it up, and I kid you not, I mean, there's synchronicity, but this is what Rumi said. It's called The Hiding Place. The most secure place to hide a treasure of gold is in some desolate, unnoticed place. Why would anyone hide treasure in plain sight? And so it is said, joy is hidden beneath sorrow.
Oh, that is beautiful. Yeah. Thank you, Harriet. Yeah.
So perhaps this has been true for a very, very long time.
I'm aware that it's 9:15, and I sort of try and keep this in under an hour. I think, maybe we've got time for, you know, one or two questions. If there's anything that any of you here would like to ask Harriet, you can, you know, type it in the comments now. And I'm going to put up the rest of your pictures that you sent after this as well, Harriet. So if you want to add any kind of, you know, comments to those, that would be lovely too. I'm just giving it a moment because I'm aware we need to, you know, we have this little bit of a lapse before those comments appear. Would you read that Rumi again while we're waiting? Because it's
perfect.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah.
The most secure place to hide a treasure of gold is in some desolate, unnoticed place. Why would anyone hide treasure in plain sight? And so it is said, joy is hidden beneath sorrow.
Thank you. Tish is asking, where can we find out more about June the 12th? And we can find out, Harriet.
Yeah, so in the little clip video, you've put a link to the Radical Joy for Hard Times Facebook group, but we can put that up again. There's also radicaljoy.org, and you go to the box that says Earth Exchange, and then 2021. So then what you can do is you can actually register where you are and what you intend to do. So if you already, while you're listening to this, think, oh yeah, I do know a place, you know, there's the old mill, or, you know, somewhere, I don't know, there's so many places, it's hard to. But the thing is, what's interesting is since COVID, we've really become a wonderful knitted community of local and personal places that are easy to get to, that you can just walk to, and that we're bringing a sense of local community back to this practice. So it doesn't have to be a big, thing like, the Thames or, anything huge. It can just be something very local and meaningful to you. And that is where the practice becomes so meaningful, I think, because it really does connect you to your local place.
Yeah. I'm glad you're here, Tish, because Tish is just over the hill from me, and actually one of the sites that I was thinking about is the landfill site that's, I think, between my home and Tish's, so perhaps we'll get together and do something.
Excellent.
So I want to finish this session by, I always like to finish these by offering a blessing of sorts, and the blessing that I wanted to share with you all this evening is the Shambhala Warriors mind training, and I think this is originally this version that I'm going to read is adapted a little by Glennie Kindred, I think, but it comes from the work of Joanna Macy. And for anybody who kind of really struggles with this work, or is struggling with the grief and the pain and the enormity, of what we're kind of apprehending, the hard times part, I feel that this really speaks to the heart of that. And it's based on an 8th century Tibetan prophecy, believed by some to refer to this time. So if you'd like to just ready yourself to hear and receive these words, perhaps by just settling yourself a little more comfortably where you are, and perhaps feeling your feet on the ground if you're sitting, really feeling into the earth beneath us, and we are all connected on this earth, wherever we are right now, and whenever you're tuning into this, and we're all under this same sky together too. Firmly establish your intention to live for the healing of our world. Be conscious of it, nurture it, honour it every day. Be fully present in our time. Find the courage to breathe in the suffering of our world. Allow peace and healing to breathe out through you in return. Do not meet power on its own terms. See through to its real nature, mind and heart made. Lead your response from that level. Simplify. Clear away the dead wood in your life. Look for the heart wood and give it the first call on your time, the best of your energy. Put down the leaden burden of saving the world alone. Join with others of like mind. Align yourself with the forces of resolution. Hold a single vision in the same thought, the transformation of yourself and of the world. Live your life around that edge, always keeping it in sight. As a bird flies on 2 wings, balance outer activity with inner sustenance. Following your heart, realize your own unique gift. Cultivate them with diligence to offer knowledge and skill to the world. Train in non-violence of body, speech and mind. With great patience to yourself, learn to make beautiful each action, thought and word. In the crucible of meditation, bring forth day by day the compassion, wisdom, skill and courage for which the world longs. Sit with hatred until you feel the fear beneath it. Sit with fear until you feel the compassion beneath that. Do not set your heart on particular results. Enjoy positive action for its own sake. Rest confident that it will bear fruit. When you see violence, greed, and narrow-mindedness in the fullness of its power, walk straight into the heart of it, remaining open to the sky and in touch with the earth. Staying open, staying grounded, remember that you are the inheritors of thousands of generations of life. Staying open, staying grounded, be confident in the magic and power that arise when people come together in a great cause. Staying open, staying grounded, have faith that the forces of wisdom and compassion will manifest through our actions for the healing of our world. When you see the weapons of hate, disarm them with love. When you see the fortresses of narrow-mindedness, breach them with truth. When you find yourself in dark clouds of dread, dispel them with courage. When the forces of power seek to isolate us from one another, reach out with joy. In it and through it all, holding to your intention, let go into the music of life and dance. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much.
It was really lovely to read it again, you know, in the light of thinking about radical joy for hard times, and even thinking about that image of the bird, and yeah, it has the extra resonance of how that bird flies on two wings, and it perfectly expresses that, really, doesn't it? That holding the intention of healing the world and healing yourself. Yeah, in your two hands. So thank you so much, Harriet, for joining me and for sharing your experience with us. And thank you so much, everyone who's with us here and now, and also all those who are joining us afterwards. And as I say, if you're joining afterwards, please do, you know, say hello and let us know that you've popped in to join the discussion too. And I guess, you know, I know that some people who are here are connected with each other, and you know, perhaps we can build those connections to do things together on June the 12th. And I know that quite a few people here, probably the majority, are part of the Druid community as well. And yeah, I kind of feel that there's something being called for, you know, for us to do, you know, as a community, as well. So yeah, let's just hold that intention, openness, and see where that leads.
That's perfect. That really feels very, very joyous. And I'm so grateful to you, River, for inviting me. And thank you to all the people who came along, and for all those who are going to watch it in the future. Yeah, it's great. Really great.
Really great. Yes. Lots of love and bright full moon blessings to all. Yeah.
Full moon blessings. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.